of the Mystery Wine Blind Tasting is underway now. Who's joining us? I am joined tonight wonderfully by two friends and great patrons of the restaurant. Krista and Glenn are with me in the actual room here. They're sitting behind the camera. They were dining with us earlier and weren't going to make it home in time to join us, and so they're sitting in on this. I'm going to ping them with a few questions here and there, but I won't put them on the hot seat. But I will put the rest of you on the hot seat as we do each week. Who is with us? Joining now, this is a pretty fascinating, very aromatic white that we're, I think, tucking into. Glenn, Krista, smelling anything thus far? Seeing anything? Anything jumping out? It's pretty aromatic.
It is.
Right? It's got a lot.
No wood.
No wood.
No wood.
Susan's with us. Hi, Susan. Trish and Andy and Kathy, as per each week, are joining us. Thank you so much to both of you. Both groups of you, I should say, all four of you. No wood. There's a little bit of a sulfur note on it, right? There's a kind of a, when I say sulfur, you have sort of like a mineral bath kind of smell to it. Carrie is with us tonight, and Peggy and Chris. And hey, Chris Perriman, how are you, sir? Joining us tonight as well. The Millettes are here, Stephen and Nicole. Kathy's with us. Hi, Kathy. Kathy Lang-Wiedemann, that is. We've got a few Kathys. And Eric and Wendy are joining us tonight. That's fantastic. Well, Wendy's joining us soon. That's great. And Erica, hi. Erica and Jen are watching. Hi, Jen. Jan's joining us tonight, too. And Allison. Candy and Kevin. So it's our usual cast of characters joining us tonight. And I am, Chris. I'm at work tonight. Yep. The last couple of nights I've had the pleasure, or last couple of Thursdays I should say, I've had the pleasure of picking up the girls and ferrying back and forth to dance class, and so I did it from home. Tonight there's no dance class because the youngest is doing a Girl Scouts program with Michelle Obama. She's doing some kind of online program for all of Girl Scouts, which is really fascinating, and so I didn't want to do this at home and have them doing it at home and not have the right connectivity. So I'm here at work, and we have a lot of preparations underway for what is probably going to be our busiest week, perhaps in the history of this restaurant, as we venture into a very busy Mother's Day. Somebody here had the bright idea of opening up brunch on Mother's Day. That's this guy. And so the team and I are trying to figure out how to make that happen now. So I have some work to do after this. But yes, Chad's with us, and the Kiskenbaums are with us. That's awesome. We have a white tonight. It seems like it's been a while since we've had a white, but maybe it was just because we had a rosé and then a red. But this white is pretty expressive and pretty aromatic. So let's start, of course, as we always do, with the visual. So what do you see when you're looking at this wine? What's the color look like? And you can refer, we haven't talked about it in a while, but if you have this sheet kind of gives you a layout of what to think about. It walks you through from top to bottom. So the wine, is it clear or hazy? Pretty easy, right? It's pretty clear. There's no cloudiness, fogginess here. This is a wine that shows all the way through, so it's clear. The intensity is sort of medium. It's not super deep and rich in color, but it isn't light by any means, right? It's not pale. There's kind of a nice richness to this particular wine. And Allison, yeah, it would have been great to have the Obamas. This is a general call, an invitation to any of the Obamas. If they wish to join our tasting, we would make space for them happily. Expedition Vintage and John is with us tonight. That's great. Susan, no problem. You can always miss a week if you're tasting other wines, so you get a pass for sure. And Jan, yeah, it's golden and clear. Lindsay's with the three gals there with her, which is great. So golden-ish, yeah, right? There's a more gold-hued color to this. So if you're looking at this, and you have lemon, gold, and amber. This isn't on the amber side of things. It doesn't have a brownish color. It isn't lemony and kind of bright yellow. It is more on the golden side of things, or right in the middle of that gold, and sort of a medium intensity. So what does that tell you about this? This might have a little bit of thicker skin. It might be a varietal that's not going to be something light and easygoing. So sometimes when you're talking about something like Pinot Grigio, for example, it's almost see-through, clear, because they're not really doing anything with the skins. They're trying just to use the juice. Perhaps this is Chardonnay to that Pinot Grigio, or Chardonnay to that Sauvignon Blanc. The Sauvignon Blanc might give you a little bit of a greenish cast to it. So already you're starting to think that this has a particular character that you can begin to rule things out. And as we're talking here with Krista and Glenn about their journey with this particular tasting profile, they don't know everything yet, and there's no way in which to know everything, but what you can start to do is to start to say, it's not this. And so when you can begin to definitively say, I don't think it's this, you start to dwindle the world down to get a more manageable set of thoughts about the wine that you can then make an educated guess. And that's usually what I'm doing, unless, of course, I have a recollection of a particular wine and a taste. But Chris is keeping us on track too, and showing or stating that he sees some fast tears, and those fast tears, those legs, sort of called, when you swirl the wine and it forms along the rim there, they'll start to drop from that rim. Those are tears or legs, and they do form fast, and they're consistent, they're uniform. So this is a semi-indication perhaps of alcohol. We've been fooled. Even last week, for example, we had a 14.5 by the label, but probably that was for distribution and importation reasons and tariff reasons more than probably the actual alcohol. But we've had wines that are 14 plus and sheet and kind of go quickly. But generally speaking, the higher alcohol you have in a wine, either in the form of actual alcohol or you have a residual sugar note, so that an unrealized potential alcohol, you get legs that form that are thicker and that stick on the glass and rotate or come down with a little bit more slowness as opposed to ones that are fast. So this fast one would indicate a little bit lower alcohol perhaps, but not necessarily. They're forming and they're not sheeting down in like one continuous sheet, so they are forming. So we're talking maybe in the 13s. This is not necessarily giving us one clue one way or another, but it's something to certainly consider. Lindsay and her crew said they smell pear. So what are you starting to smell? This is pretty aromatic. Candy's saying that she thinks this aroma indicates Petit Manseng, and Eric's throwing out some green apple. Candy, when you say Petit Manseng, for you, what does that mean? Tons of fruit on the nose. Jan, I agree, there is fruit here. There's a tropical fruit note. Anybody getting a spicy note? And by spice, this could be kind of mace and cardamom, kind of, there's a little bit of a hint of sort of a clove note to me. There's an aromatic profile to this that could be Petit Manseng. So you have pineapple usually. Pineapple is a big key for Petit Manseng. If you have that note, you can also think about other aromatic varietals. So if we're saying this is an aromatic white, we should be considering Gewürztraminer. We should be considering maybe Chenin Blanc. Maybe we are talking a little bit about Torrontés from South America. We could be talking about Traminer or variations on that Gewürztraminer element. Kathy's picking up ginger, and so where are you headed, Kathy? We could be talking about something Kerner-ish or Italian white varietal. Susan's picking up some pineapple and banana. Jan's asking about a little bit of sage. Anybody picking up sage? A green note? An herbal note? Yeah, that's a great key. Kristen just noted that it makes your mouth water when you smell it, which is interesting. The ginger spice and the spice element, that kind of aromatic profile, like I just laid out, always takes me to one of those particular places, or at least I start thinking that because it's distinctive, and not many varietals could just achieve that without having that particular varietal used, right? So you can't necessarily coax that out of Chardonnay. You could potentially add a winemaker's touch in terms of a barrel or a certain fermentation style or an aging technique, but some of that spice and some of those notes that we're getting are much more signatures of the fruit itself, of the varietal. So a lot of peach and lime, some lemongrass, hay coming out for Susan and then Chris, or in reverse I should say, Chris then Susan. So really, really aromatic in the way of fruit, a little bit of some earthen notes in the way of hay, spice in the way of ginger, in that heat. There's a potential higher acidity just because the profile that we're smelling seems to suggest that. Krista, when you say that smells like acid, are you thinking too of like a cocktail that has an acid balance with sweetness, like that pineapple element, like you're kind of tasting, you're smelling on your olfactory senses, referencing something that is sweet and sour.
No, I was thinking more mineral. Like
Mineral.
Yeah. Like,
Great. So a mineral profile that would have sort of that salinity element to it. So more of a saline quality that would make you kind of pucker up a touch. Kiwi, Chris. Interesting. Chris Rutten is putting up a kiwi. So we've got tropical fruit ranging from kiwi to pineapple. We've got some stone fruit and peach. We've got citrus in the way of lime, banana. Pretty expressive. All right, let's taste this. Sometimes those descriptors, especially as we talk about Petit Manseng, maybe Gewürztraminer, we often might think that there's a potential, at least, for residual sugar. Is this a dry wine? And where do you determine that? On the end of the experience, right? So up front, there's almost a flirtation of some sweetness. The alcohol's a little bit higher. It's kind of got a glycerol quality to it. Like if you just sipped on vodka, that the way the sensation of how the vodka hits the front of your tongue and rounds out in the mouth is the alcohol that is that experience. There's alcohol in this wine. There's a higher alcohol in this wine. But on the finish, there's no real residual sugar. There's no lingering kind of sweetness or syrupiness that it persists. In fact, it's pretty dry. What comes through? Yeah, Jan's agreeing with Krista in that she's got a lot of dryness and some minerals. Sort of the mineral profile for sure lingers with the finish of this wine. Not puckering, Chris notes too, Chris Shirley. Yeah, it's not a high acid wine. I think we're talking about a moderate acidity, maybe a little bit moderate minus, low to medium, kind of low plus, medium minus. It's cleaner and clearer on the palate. John from Expedition Vintage is noting probably more so than I would have expected from the aromas on the nose. So I'm not picking up, how about you, as much on the palate as the nose is giving. It has a waxiness almost. It's fat. It's got a texture to it that is oily almost. It's a little salty. David Pearson saying, yeah, I agree on the finish for sure. Going back to Krista's note and to Jan's note, I think that's definitely an indicator of the back end of the experience. There's almost more of a muted fruit expression, some stone fruit element. Kathy's picking up a little buttery note on the nose, which others are agreeing with. So maybe a little bit of malolactic fermentation. The palate is more about the texture than it is about the flavor, isn't it? Susan's picking up a bit of peach on the palate. And maybe it's just because I'm swirling it and because now I'm more immersed in it, but the aroma is not as pronounced. Some of that's blown off. Clove.
Yeah, clove. First taste.
On the palate.
On the palate.
Glenn's got a little bit of clove, so spice on the palate.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's more and more pronounced. And a bit more buttery element on the nose for Susan when she first had it in a more chilled state. This is kind of tough. This is befuddling. So something that has lower acid, because it definitely isn't zinging in the way of an acidic component. It does sort of leave a salty film. And it's not sea spray, it's more mineral, it's more salt block. I mean, it's Chris Shirley saying it reminds him of chocolatey, but not sparkling. Ah, interesting.
Yeah, it's not a crisp mineral. I mean,
It's a heavy mineral. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, Chris is saying maybe Verdejo. Kathy's saying that she thinks it's something that is more unusual and based on over a year's worth of experience doing this, and Tony now picking out things that are anything but usual. I when I sat down and before we started, I said to Glenn and Krista that it has aroma that I have a few ideas, but now tasting this, I'm not sure I know distinctly that this is one variety or another. So where do you get that spice? Where do you get low acid, moderate acid, white, and some of that floral and aromatic profile, tropical even, but not necessarily expressive on the palate, but we're definitely have some higher alcohol. And to the Chan children, hello, who just gave us 3 highs. Hello to you guys. It's fantastic. It's moving more into that spice, a little bit of that butter. So some of that, your first note, Glenn, about not being oaked, maybe now there's that spice is coming through and that textural weight. This could have a little bit of sort of a tiny touch of oak. Yeah, and Chris is sitting in a seat that's helpful to all of us. One with his particular knowledge base, Chris Pearman, but not without the wine. Without the wine, he's just listening to our comments and saying maybe this is a Bordeaux white blend, very waxy Semillon element. So the Semillon giving you sort of that spice profile. Blend absolutely could be here. Susan's comment is perfect. Yeah, and one I rely on every week. She's saying that basically when she first smelled this wine, she wasn't going to get there on her own, and she needed this group. And cheers to that. We are going to crowdsource this one for sure. South America, Jan, one of my first thoughts was Torrontés. We've done it before, and I think we would be a little bit more vervy and acid. Some of the aromatics that we picked up would be appropriate, but I kind of like the Semillon Sauvignon Blanc. So maybe like 80% Semillon, 20%. You just rarely find something that's 100% Semillon produced. It's done, but Chris Shirley's stumped. I'm with you, Chris, 100%. Time to pour a bit more. Just more, guys. So if we're talking about a blend, I almost always think blend right off the bat. Going to the southern part of France in the Rhone Valley, right? A white Grenache. Chris is saying white Grenache again. And white Grenache from where? We've tasted a very saline white Grenache with Sauvignon Blanc, and that was from Spain, remember? And so that was a beautiful wine. That was very interesting. The other white blend that I was just referencing too from the Bordeaux side, thanks to Chris's comment, would be Semillon Sauvignon Blanc. We could be talking about a white blend that would be something from northern Italy, perhaps, a non-conventional blend. There's kind of anybody getting sort of that stewed apple element right now? And the spice is getting more and more pronounced.
I got a green apple.
Green apple, fresh, tart green apple. Yeah.
Yes, a fresh.
A little bit of white pepper, and that clove is still present. And that apple. This wine is changing, as we've seemingly found each and every week. Kathy's helping by helping and not helping. Thank you, Kathy. Croatia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Georgia, Lebanon, Greece. Yeah. What if it was like a Georgian white? So Arcatzelli, lower acid in that profile. Susan's noting lower acid, so later harvest or warmer climate. Yep. And Jen was saying that, or Jen's echoing Kathy's comments about particular origin. Yeah, maybe we're talking about a pretty fun place. I mean, for Lebanon, for example, we've tasted wines from Chateau Moussard, and they have Merwa and Obade that are two varietals that are Semillon-like. So if we're drinking kind of the Chateau Moussard Jeune, the young white, The Arcat. This is something that Arcatatelli, huh? I mean, for me, Arcatatelli, I probably tried this many variations on Arcatatelli. You could probably lop off a couple fingers. It's just not something I've tried a bunch of, and I've probably tried a few more variations done in Virginia than I've done from Georgia, although I went to one Georgian tasting and tried a few there. And referencing that from memory, there's an element here. So it would be a flyer. It would be the educated guess, like, spice, interesting profile, unlike anything else I've tried, lower acid. I'm going to venture a guess, Arcatatelli from Georgia. But that would be a guess. I think we could easily argue, too, that this is like Treminette from northern Italy blended with something else. We could argue, I would have a harder time arguing, I think, Tarantes. It doesn't have kind of that rosy element for Gewürztraminer. Chris Pearman's asking Old World, New World, and Ancient World. Yeah, Georgia would be the Ancient World for sure, the oldest production. Chris is saying Georgia would be cool. So we would all feel pretty cool about guessing Georgia, but if we got that wrong, it would be okay, because you just, how often do you get a chance to blind taste a Georgian white? Hungary, we'd be considering something like maybe Ferment. And that would be neat. Ferment, you get sort of Chenin Blanc-like characteristics. I think you'd get a bit higher acid, I think. The apple element you certainly would get. It's definitely Old World, we think. Anybody have anything kind of definitive about this that's telling you where you want to go? Kosovar wine is interesting, but it's mostly reds. Kevin's in the Old World with candy, but not familiar. Higher acid on the Treminette, so it isn't Treminette. Aged in stone, yeah, we could be talking about some kind of amphora element. We could be talking about concrete. Yeah, that'd be very interesting. It's not an orangish wine, so it's not one that's gotten like a super aged in amphora, but it has some of that kind of interesting profile. And Robert Haynes is being visited right now by his dad, who said this is kind of like a Turkish white that he's had in the past, which is really cool. I'm trying to remember the aromatics of the white Kathy's noting from Moussard, the Obade and Merwa. Obade is kind of a variation on Chardonnay, I think, and Merwa is Semillon. So we're back to kind of that Semillon point, or I might have that reversed. I don't recall exactly which one is which, but one of them is sort of a variation, we think, or is related to Semillon, which could be interesting. And the aromatics, it's been a while since I've had the Jeune. The Jeune seemed like it was a little bit more, a little less spiced, but I could be wrong about that. Youngish, it is young. I mean, this is not something that has a bunch of age on it. It doesn't have an age profile. It definitely has some, either the varietal shows this spicy note or there was a little bit of wood, but there's not a bunch of other elements here that suggest wood. Going back to sort of that blend idea, I don't think this is Marsanne or Roussanne. Roussanne would be one that would give us sort of this waxiness and this texture and this lower acid, but get more of a nuttiness and less of that spice, and the aromatics wouldn't be as pronounced as they were here. And David's asking what would contribute to the saltiness. Probably location, coastal. Yeah. Or the profile, right? The actual profile of the soil type. Croatia could be interesting, right? And if so, I wouldn't necessarily know what varietal to target. But a mineral composition, more of a chalky composition, limestoney composition of the soil, that would give you more of that mineral profile than something like clay or granite, something like that would give a different profile. So, but like when you taste, like Chris was noting, Chris Shirley earlier, about the profile of chocolate. You get that sort of sea spray element, and he's just noting now maybe Mediterranean Greek. We could be talking about an interesting kind of Greek wine here. That'd be The acid, though, generally in those wines is a lot higher, but there's a nuttiness now coming through. Muscadet, Melanie's asking. Muscadet, I think not quite as much spice typically, but you know the minerality, yes. So these are all good options, I think, to kind of key into certain components and parts of this wine, and absolutely deserve to be considered. I don't think anything we've said necessarily kind of covers everything, other than sort of a flyer like a Georgian white that we might go with, attributing all these things to a wine that I don't necessarily know how to guide you to taste exactly. It has a nice body. This is a medium-bodied wine, medium plus. It's almost rich. I think partly because it has such a lower acid profile, it sits a bit heavier on the palate. It doesn't kind of lift as you finish the sip. Do you like this wine?
I do like this one.
Yeah, I do like this wine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's distinctive.
It's
Chris,
different.
like, where is it from?
Right. Chris Shirley's note is just when he wants to have hummus with this. Yeah, it has.
This is not easy.
No, this is not an easy wine to get.
Hummus. Yeah, hummus and chips. That would be good.
Mm-hmm. That textural quality, a little bit of the spice that's in the hummus, the coriander, cumin. Candy's saying that she thinks Tony right now is smiling. He's working a section, so he's reserved a smile for this one, I'm sure, at the moment.
He was smiling when he set us up here.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
So he knew. Yes. Greek or Mediterranean from Chris. Some of us thought Georgian. Some of us are throwing out sort of that island element of Greek, giving that salinity is nice. Anybody else want to put a flag somewhere specific? This one is really hard. Yes, I agree, Chris.
I Greek, but
I do too.
Croatia was stuck in my head, but you can't get Croatian wine, so it would be.
If he did that,
Yeah, for $25,
would be dastardly.
Pretty impressed.
I think this is one of those wines for me. For me, for sure, I'll learn something because I don't have this pegged. I don't have a clear sense. So maybe Lebanon. Maybe we're talking Greek. Maybe we're talking Georgian or Cacciatelli. Maybe we're talking a blend from somewhere else. But maybe we're back to sort of Bordeaux, giving you some of that element. But I don't know that this texture and kind of that lower acidity, you get it like a little. You're going to get a little greenness. You're going to get some of that Sauvignon character, I think, and it's not really here. And I think you'd get a little bit more of the wood profile. And Ed Haynes hanging out with Robert, I know, is planting his flag in Turkey, which is great. Ed, do you know what the varietal was that you were tasting in that wine in Turkey? I haven't had a whole bunch of Turkish wine. So Susan's going to hang with our cat in Georgia, 2019. She's the most specific at this point, which is good. It's taking us there. I'm sorry, Chris, I skipped right past you there. You were saying Muscofiliero. I think, though, that would be higher acid and more perfumey. It definitely had some of the aromatics to begin with, but probably would be a little higher acid. That's kind of what's taken me away from Italy. Generally, we just get a lovely amount of acid from Italian whites. So, and there's that spice. It's just still, from the first note for you, Glenn, all the way through, there's just this kind of clove element that's...
I just get clove.
Unless it's Adriatic Italian.
More sea influenced, sort of Adriatic Croatia, up in that nook of.
I could not believe this is a Croatian wine for $25.
I couldn't either.
So I want to rule out Croatia just for the
price point. So Glenn and Chris are saying that the price point alone kind of rules out Croatia in their mind. There's we had a Croatian white from a guy named Eni Simčić, and I don't remember the varietals that were in that. But Candy's asking where I am. I don't know. I'm going to get to a point here where we're at 30 minutes in, and this is usually where I have to plant a flag. That I'm not Italy, I'm not France, as we were starting there. So I'm going away from that. I like Greece. I don't know if I like the spice profile for the Grecian wine, and so that leads me more toward perhaps Lebanon to be considered. I think Georgian white would be kind of interesting, and it does reference some of those points for sure. So I think I'm going to stick with the Georgian white, but that's more of me an educated guess than a comfort of, yeah, I'm pretty clear on where this is headed. So Chris is saying perhaps Orsotico, but Grecian blend is kind of where he's feeling it. Guys, where are you going?
Oh,
I don't know.
Don't know. We're going to learn something then.
yeah.
All right. Final sips, final thoughts. It's a nice quality wine, though. It has a lot going on for $25, for sure. That salinity, that minerality is still present. The clove is still there.
Yeah.
Some of that apple's kind of still poking
Flavor's
through.
Still really good out of it.
Some of those tropical notes, though, kind of have gone away. The banana, the pineapple, all of that sort of dissipated. So, this is a wine from Lebanon.
Wow.
Yeah. This is a Chateau St. Thomas, 2018, Obidi. So this is 100% Obidi, which I think, you have to double check me on that, but I think that's Semillon. I could be wrong about that. Or at least related to.
Well, that was one
How
of
cool
those.
is that? This is overlooking the Bekaa Valley, altitude of 1,000 meters on the eastern slope of Mount Lebanon. It's an indigenous varietal that is said to have a relationship, I think. It's delicious. It's pretty neat. It's pretty cool. So, yeah. Kathy, you got us close in the way of Lebanon. Guys, you can take a peek at it if you want. It's Tony did some good digging there to find that one. I don't know about it. Definitely had some sulfur, Chris, on the front end. There was definitely a note of that. But wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty cool.
I was surprised that a lot of people guessed
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah,
Impressive.
it's an awesome group that we get to play with.
They've
That
done a lot of research.
yes, that gets us to a potential Lebanese white. And the first experience with Lebanese wine for some of us, which is awesome. That's great. And it's the second wine we've had from the Bekaa Valley. We did a Chateau Moussard, the Oshar Red, when I had Tony on a hot seat. I got to pick one for him. So he's returning the favor with another Lebanese wine here, and a white one in particular. I mean, if you go out and talk to, go dine at any other restaurant, talk to the sommelier there and say, oh yeah, I was at a blind tasting on Thursday and I had an Obade from Lebanon as a blind wine. That's not fair. But that's the cool part about this experience, is that we get to try things we're not going to normally select for ourselves and not necessarily know, and not knowing that is perfectly okay. And even getting close to that is awesome. It's a tremendous experience. So that red was amazing. I agree, from Chateau Moussard. For those of you that have had your first experience with Lebanese wine, please make your way to experiencing Chateau Moussard. And if you need a place to do so, may I humbly offer our venue to do that. We have a whole bunch of Chateau Moussard. We love those wines tremendously. So beautiful with some pork. Yeah, if you had a pork roast tonight, that'd be fantastic fun with this, a little bit spiced. You could almost let it kind of go to room temperature and enjoy it that way. Serve it with some grains that have been just lightly spiced. We have like a little couscous or something like that would be beautiful. So fun as always, and thanks to my guests this evening who are not able to get home in time. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to all of you. We will do this again next week. I don't know. Is it red? Do you know? I think it's red. We'll do a red next week. Probably not from Lebanon, but we'll find out where it is from as we get to that point. So cheers, everybody. Until then, have a great week.